the key is, what meaning are we giving to that thought or that thing that is bothering us, that we're suffering with?
Welcome to Champions Mojo Weekly Podcast with your hosts, Kelly Pallas and Maria Parker. You'll hear authentic, entertaining stories with tips, lessons, and wisdom from champions to inspire, motivate, and educate you. You'll get the tools you need for becoming a true champion in your own life. And now, your host, Kelly Pallas.
Welcome, friends. We have an awesome episode of Champions Mojo for you today. Our topic is about pain and suffering, and who better to talk about this than two endurance athletes? We're not going to just be talking about that physical side of pain that you feel in athletics, but we're also going to be talking about emotional and mental pain, and I think that's really more where suffering comes in. I think there's a physical pain, and then suffering tends to be more mental. What do you think, Maria?
Yeah, I was thinking about those two words too, and I came to sort of the same conclusion. Suffering also implies longer term pain, something that maybe goes on for more time. But I agree with you that pain is, I sort of identify with something physical and suffering more with mental. Although I've read that they're the same neurons that fire in your head, so I think that's interesting.
Well, we are going to jump right into this topic because I know if someone out there has pain and suffering or wants to know how to deal with it, then they really want the answer. They've tuned in and they want the answer. They want to hear something that's going to help them. So,
and we're going to give it to you.
And we're going to give it to you. So, I think you and I said that we were going to each talk about when we have truly, suffered, and we're going to start with athletics for me. And are you starting with an athletic story?
I hadn't thought to, but I have tons of good suffering stories from athletics. So
well,
happy to.
What we're doing with the podcast is taking athletic techniques and helping transfer over to life, which I totally have a story for us today. Do you want me to start, or you want to
Yes,
start?
Kelly.
Okay.
I think, your experience is fabulous. And we've talked about how you deal with suffering, and I'm anxious to hear your story.
So as a distance swimmer, you just definitely you're in a little bit of a different place than other athletes because we call it sensory deprivation, face down on the black line. So you're really totally into your thoughts and your feelings, where I've done, of course, triathlons and other sports, and I can kind of distract myself a little bit when I'm running and think, oh, there's a beautiful tree, or riding my bike, there's a cloud going by, or doesn't the wind feel good in my face, or whatever. But in swimming, you are truly face down on a black line, and it is you and your thoughts. And when your thoughts become negative, it is just, it makes it even more painful. And pain brings on negative thoughts. But so when I'm swimming a distance event, it's very typical to swim on the border of your threshold, where you are just, if you go a little faster, you're going to completely lock up and die and get off your pace. And if you swim any slower, then it's not going to feel painful, but you're going to just slow down, and then you're not going to have a good performance. So it's really kind of a game that you play with yourself, where you stay on that threshold of, is this a pace I can hold? How long can I hold it? Am I going to die? And so the way, obviously, that swimmers who swim distance events prepare for this kind of pain is practice. So my story goes back to when I was invited to a distance camp at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, and I was really excited to be one of the up-and-coming, distance swimmers in the country when I was in my, late teens, early 20s. And I was invited to this camp, and one of the coaches there was the famous Chuck Riggs, who was the coach of young Sippy Woodhead, who was the American record holder in the 1650. So I was like, wow, I get to swim under Chuck Riggs. And then there were about 20 of us in the camp, but one of the girls who was in the camp was Karen Burton, who was one of our top, I think at the time she was maybe our top miler. So I thought, oh gosh, this is it. I'm going to go and get to swim with Chuck Riggs, this great coach, and swim among, some really super fast swimmers. And I wasn't, a big name. I was just kind of one of the up and comers. And so one of the days in practice, we did a set of 10 800s, which is a pretty long amount of swimming.
Yeah,
it's, it's 8,000 meters.
Sounds like a terribly long interval.
Yeah. So that's for swimming, that's going to take around 9 or 10 minutes. So it's about a half mile. It's like 10 half miles. And there was not a lot of rest. And I was just so excited to be swimming with all these people and under this first, amazing swim coach that on the first one, I just blew it out. Like I just went so fast, and I was right up there in front of, I remember I was in front of Karen Burton, and I thought, what the heck am I doing? I've got 9 more of these things. And so on the second one, I felt pretty good. And I just decided, well, I'm just going to take it one at a time. So I literally
I'm going for it.
Yeah, I just decided, I'm going to try to lead my lane and be first on every one of them. And if I die, then I just die. I'm just going to stay in that present moment. And that's something that, that we've talked about. So each one, I pretended like it was the last one.
And that's beautiful.
Yes. And I ended up having, staying with my pace, all 10 of them. And at the end of the workout, and this is why Chuck Riggs was a great coach, he gave me a little candy bar that I don't even know if these candy bars still exist. And I didn't even know they existed back then, but it was called an animal candy bar. So it was a white candy bar, and it had like zebras and lions and tigers on it. And it was the animal candy bar. And he gave me that candy bar and said, you were the animal of this workout. And the way that I did it, I was in pain, but I just took it one repetition at a time. And I did what you and I have talked about forever. And this is the message out of this story, is called pain in the present. And so if someone's out there dealing with pain, it's the anticipation that, oh, this pain is going to go on forever, or, that if you can just say, the pain might get better. And there's always times within those distance events where I feel terrible in one part of the race, I feel mediocre in another part, and I might feel great. And those will alternate through. So do you feel like that, Maria, when you're on that threshold?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's a great story, because you actually taught me that. I used to, as an adult onset athlete, as we've talked about, I used to really fear pain. And I would get all bunched up, and, I'd start to feel uncomfortable, because, as you say, in order to improve, you have to be right on that edge of I can't go any faster or I'll blow up. But that's a very uncomfortable place to be. And you taught me, don't anticipate and don't be afraid. I mean, because there's the pain, there's the physical pain, and then there's your emotions about the pain. And the emotions about the pain, and I imagine in swimming that's much worse, as you pointed out. You're so much inside yourself. The emotions they can make you quit. They can make you give up. So the idea of just being right there in that moment and not fearing the future, I guess, is what it is, right?
Yes. It's staying in that present moment and saying, yes, I'm in pain. Everything hurts. I'm right on the edge, but I'm alive. I'm okay. I'm holding my pace right now. And
right.
That is, I think, pain in the present for anything is just key. And you have obviously done it so well. What stories do you have, Maria?
Well, for athletics, as endurance athletes, we experience sort of long long events that have a lot of discomfort. For me, I have struggled in cycling with my stomach, and nausea is a different kind of discomfort. I don't know if you can really.
I think it's almost worse than pain.
Yeah, I would agree.
Suffering. It's suffering. There's the suffering.
Yeah, I guess so. But and towards after usually about 12 hours, if I'm doing a 24-hour event on the bike, my stomach starts to just not feel good. And so I was doing this. I was trying to set a new women's record for 24 hours, and sure enough, about 14 hours, my stomach just started being really upset, and and I was knowing, I was fearing that the 8 hours ahead of me, the 10 hours ahead of me, that I was going to be nauseated, and I had to keep bringing myself back to the moment. Just right now, it's you're feeling nausea, but there's a good chance you won't feel nausea in the future, and that really does help. Also for me, and I think you taught me this too, Kelly. What feels good? Like, so if I'm concentrating on my stomach and I feel like I'm going to throw up, and this is a distraction technique. Okay, so I'm riding along, and my stomach doesn't feel that great, but golly, my arms, my legs, my head feels good. There are other parts of me that are doing just great. So in order to get through that, I had to really, I just kind of kept inventorying my whole body and going, I feel pretty good. My legs are strong. My neck, everything feels good. I'm putting out a lot of power. Yeah, I'm nauseated, but everything else is good. And that actually helped. I don't know, helped the nausea to go away, and it would come back and go away. But I love pain in the present. It's because it just reminds you that if you're here, then you can, then you're not fearing. Fear is a terrible thing to bring into life or athletics.
Yes.
Maria, it just creates
that.
Yes.
So pain in the present, yes, is a great one. But I love your additional observation there, where what is feeling good, and that's
right.
So true that you might be really tight in your shoulders, but your legs feel good, and this
right.
is something that I thought of with my physical pain of going through red skin syndrome, where my whole skin would be feeling terrible, but I would say, well, my back doesn't hurt. My poor husband has, terrible back disability and a lot of back pain, and he can be in just excruciating pain. And so sometimes when, I was suffering with my skin, he would be suffering with his back, and I would say to myself, well, at least my back doesn't hurt, and so that's a
exactly.
really great point, that there's, you can find something that isn't in pain and focus on that and that's a gratitude thing. But I love that.
Yes, it is. It's gratitude, and gratitude changes everything. If you're thinking about what is good,
yes,
what's not awful, what's going well.
So in building this, these takeaways for people. So keep your pain in the present. Don't fear what's going on with the future. And I want to talk a little bit more on that for another as we build this. And then what is working, in this moment of pain and suffering, what's working. And then...
Yeah, what's going well.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so what else on that, Maria? Were you going to talk about anything?
Well, I guess also there's so distraction and in terms of, I think really disciplined athletes we're always sort of scanning our bodies and thinking what's going well, what's not going well. But I know a lot of us use music. And so, for me, whether it's physical pain from athletics or mental pain from a bad day or whatever, sometimes the distraction or the gratitude technique works well. If I listen to music, or if I enjoy something I use my senses, I guess is what I would say. I use my senses to take in the good and to find the good around. So music is a beautiful way to lift your spirits, and also looking at something beautiful. It's kind of an extension of gratitude and distraction. It's a way I deal with pain a lot. Do you use that in swimming, Kelly, or in other sports?
Oh, I think that's a great one. In fact, this is crazy, but my song, when I would swim and be in pain in a long swimming race, and it just started, and then it became one of those. Have you ever heard of what is it called? A earbug mantra. No, it's not a mantra, but it's like a song you can't get out of your head.
Oh, an ear. What do they call that? Earworm, something like that.
Yeah, earworm or something. Well, anyway, it was the "I drink Dr. Pepper and I'm proud" song. I drink Dr. Pepper and I'm proud. I'm part of an original crowd, and it actually went with my stroke technique. So that was certainly a distraction, I guess, because I didn't have white. Yeah, puffy clouds flying over. So I sang that, and sometimes I still even sing that, like that song. But I think music is a great one. And I wanted to say, I know a lot of people relate to movies, and I was when I did this animal candy bar set at the Olympic Training Center, where I acted like each one of those was the last one that I was doing. I wanted to just give a movie analogy to that I saw, of course, much later in life, but I'm a sci-fi movie fan. That's my favorite genre of movies. And the best movie, I think, in sci-fi that's been done in a long time is Gattaca. And it's an old one, but a good one. It still holds up. And interestingly, and I don't think this has anything to do with it, but the guy was an Olympic gold medalist swimmer in there. And but he's one of the stars of it. But the kid that ends up racing his brother in swimming, they always have this race, and he's the less physical, and he's not one of the genetically engineered superhumans. He's a natural birth. So he's against this genetically engineered superhuman, his brother, who he loves greatly, and then he's just the average, a natural born kid. And they always race the swimming race where they swim out in the ocean as far as they can swim until one of them says "uncle," and then they have to swim back. So they do this time and time again, and the genetically engineered brother is always the one that cries "uncle." And in the end, he says, "How do you beat me? You're I'm physically superior." And he says, "I never think I'm going to swim back. I just swim out as far as I can. And then when you say uncle, then I just think that I'm never going to swim back." So that is the same thing, I think.
Yeah.
It just,
I agree.
It's just really poignantly done in that movie Gattaca. And it's a great movie. But so just staying where you are and not thinking about what's ahead is the way to do it. And music certainly is a great one. And anything to add on that, Maria?
Well, yeah, I also do have sort of a song in my head, and I also have a visualization that I do when I'm in pain. I think of myself as a locomotive.
Oh, I love it.
Sort of, remember that little book? I think I can.
I think I can. Of course.
But I don't. It's not like that. It's for me. I say to myself, I am unstoppable. And this hurts, but you just keep rolling. You are a locomotive. Nothing is going to stop you. You're steady. And so, I think visualization, whatever works for you in your sport, also helps. It keeps the fear out, really, for me. And maybe, I don't know if it is for you, Kelly. I think you're less fearful than I am about some things. For me, keeping the fear away, keeping the fear at bay is the thing. And whatever I can use, pain in the present, music, visualization of me as something powerful keeps the fear down.
Yes, that's a great one. Certainly visualizing. I don't think I've ever visualized myself as an Evan Root or anything like that, but I think I can totally see that in cycling, and I'm sure that people can
exactly, because our legs are pistons.
Yes, people can apply that to anyone. If you're just dealing with some kind of a physical pain. And one of the stories that I want to transfer from, any set of 10 100s or 10 800s or any repetitive set that I've done or long swim, that so applies to life. I think that applies to life with anything we're doing. And so one of the things that, I recently had that I've talked about on the podcast was going through breast cancer, and just taking the techniques of athletes and using them in real life is what I want to point out most on this podcast. So for those that are squeamish, you might want to just fast forward ahead for about 30 seconds because this next little story is really squeamish, but I do want to tell it because it was the most pain that I think I've ever been in, and yet I got through it, and I'm fine, and I can look back on it now, and stories are what we get out of life, and I think that that which doesn't kill us makes us stronger. I really believe that. So one of the things that they had to do prior to my breast cancer surgery was, and Maria, it was funny because you were holding my hand during this. They said you can have one person hold your hand, and I looked at you and I looked at my husband, and I'm like, Maria, I want Maria to hold my hand for this. And I don't know if you remember it, but they had
chosen you over my husband.
Yeah, Mark was just like, yeah, okay. So it's pre-surgery, and we're in the hospital, and they say, and I knew this was coming because they had said we're going to have to do 4 injections in your nipple with a big needle to get the proper dye to go down into where they needed it to be. And so the nurse, if you remember, she asked me, now, honey, do you want these one at a time where you can recover in between each one? Or do you want me to just get all 4 of them done as quickly as possible? And I don't think either one would have mattered, frankly. But I think I chose the, please just get them done as quickly as you can. And so, I've been through some painful things, but 4 large needle injections into your nipple are one of the most painful things that I think you can go through. And yet, as I was laying on that table looking up at the sky, I was totally just envisioning that I had, here's 1 800, here's 2 800s, I've got 1 more to go, and that's the way I got through it. And so I think it was just staying, in the present, not anticipating, that this is going to hurt all day, or, it was just getting through each one, breathing through each one, and that was how I used, the athletic techniques to get me through something that we have in everyday life that's tough.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember just thinking how incredibly calm you were. Leading up to it, you were scared. I mean, you admitted that.
Oh, I was so scared. Yeah.
Yeah. But then once you were doing it, you put on your game face. And I remember thinking, she's putting on her game face. And you got through it.
Yeah. And that's, we've got a future episode coming up called Performance Anxiety. And so that was definitely, that'll definitely fit into there. But yeah, but I think we've hit on some good points for some take homes that people can use to get through pain and suffering. And then this is the big one. And I want to attribute this to John Flanagan, who was my swim coach for many, many years in my childhood. And then I would come back and swim for him even through college. And, when you're giving a performance of any kind and you don't perform like you want, like if you're supposed to hit a certain time and you don't, then I would just be suffering through the fact that, I hadn't done this. I can think of an example when I was swimming at NC State, and it was like the week before our conference meet, and I had, I wanted to make NCAAs, and I had to do a broken 500 free, and in order to make the cut, I had to hold, 55s with a certain amount of rest, and I couldn't break 58 on any one of them. And I was so crestfallen. I was just suffering. I was full of anxiety. And it was the question that John Flanagan would say, what does this mean? It's the meaning that we're giving our thoughts. So in my mind, it was, if I'm holding 58s today, I'm not going to be able to hold 55s, which is not true. I mean, it could just be I wasn't feeling good that day, or, I hadn't hit my taper yet. Maybe I was going to hit my taper in a week. So I think just in general, the key is, what meaning are we giving to that thought or that thing that is bothering us, that we're suffering with? And what are your thoughts on that, Maria?
Yeah, I think that's really, really true. It's like, so there's the pain, and then there's the emotion, and then there are the thoughts or the meaning associated with it. And that's a really great story, because I think we can, when we feel pain, things can be chaotic, and we can let our fears and our thoughts just kind of run wild. And another story that I was going to tell about pain that just impressed the heck out of me was watching my daughter go through childbirth. She had prepared by using a technique called hypnobirthing. She really, really prepared well, but I was thinking to myself, well, you don't know what it's going to be like when you're actually there. Having had 4 children myself, I knew. But as I watched her, I was just so impressed, because she told herself a story about each contraction that was a true story, that this is something good, that this is bringing new life, she didn't, whereas when I was in labor or I've experienced pain, I'd think, oh my gosh, that one was so bad, I can't do the next one, or whatever, and I'm never going to get through this, and this is awful. But the stories that she was telling herself with her thoughts, which she'd prepared. So I think that's sort of another, if you can prepare, preparation is really good, it helps, but she had prepared. And the stories she was telling herself through each pressure wave is what they call them in that technique, were beautiful stories. My baby's coming. This is good. This is natural. I am healthy. I am beautiful. I am, so I totally agree. It is the stories that we tell ourselves. What does it mean? Does this pain mean death, dismemberment, or does this pain mean health and future? So yeah, I like that.
Oh, I love that analogy that, what is more painful than childbirth? And what you're thinking definitely affects that. And that is actually her second 100% natural childbirth, right?
Right. She's done it twice. Yeah.
So that's really, really impressive. And preparation. So even, obviously, if you're an athlete out there listening, you're going to prepare for a race or some event coming up, or a performance where you're prepared for that pain and suffering. Or if you are someone suffering with a physical ailment, you may not have been prepared going into it. Let's say you get in a car accident and you hurt your neck. You didn't prepare for that. But if it's an ongoing suffering, then you can certainly say, I wasn't prepared this week, but next week I am going to be prepared with some of these, topics that we're discussing, which, again, just building on, what we've said is keeping pain in the present and making... I would add to that, we've talked in the past about suffering that we choose and suffering that we don't choose. Right.
And there's so much suffering in this world that we don't choose. And we all are likely... I remember Scott Peck in The Road Less Traveled, he said... that we're all going to experience pain. There's no way you can get through life without experiencing suffering and pain. And so knowing that and sort of accepting it and having these ways to sort of deal with it, I think it can be really helpful. And I think athletics does teach us that. It does teach us how to deal with difficult things. I always, I know you do this too, Kelly, but if I'm ever doing anything hard, even the dentist's office, I'm getting my teeth cleaned and it's uncomfortable and I'm thinking, okay, this is the first mile. This is the,
Yes.
this is,
Yeah.
I'm using my little, I'm putting myself, I'm making it an event. And the story I'm telling myself is that at the end, it's going to be better. I'm going to have clean teeth or whatever. So I think even if you're not an athlete, you can think about training for difficulties if you know they're coming, or once they hit, pain in the present, distraction and or gratitudes, and the story we tell ourselves about what this pain means. So
I love it. Yeah. What does it mean? And then not project that it's always going to be there, or that it's, the future pain, or what is this meaning that it's going to cause. Just deal with it right there. So that's really a beautiful, beautiful story with, childbirth and how that's affected, So wonderful. Well, in our things that we're trying to do is you did a nice wrap up there on, keeping pain in the present, focusing on what else is working, having gratitude for what is working during your pain, then, even some music, something that kind of ties in, but distraction of music, and then don't, what meaning are you giving this that's causing pain and stress? And, I can say this with my skin. Whenever I would have a bad skin day, I would think the meaning I was giving it, that I'm never going to heal. And that meaning just made me suffer so much because I healed, but I would suffer. I would make myself suffer even more when I was in pain because the meaning I gave waking up with a flare was, this is never going to go away. That was the meaning I gave it, which was wrong. So what meaning are we giving it? So those are kind of our 4 clues. And anything...
I might like to add one more because
Yeah.
I think you've mentioned it. We sort of alluded to it, is you can get help. So sometimes, Kelly, you held my hand when you had that big needle
Yes.
go into your nipple, and you've gotten help and support through your red skin. And many times when I've experienced suffering, it's hard, but I've reached out and I've gotten help. So I think that's another thing. It doesn't necessarily, happen in the middle of, even in the middle of an event. For me, I get help. I'll ask, I'm having a hard time here, guys. I need some encouragement, and people will give it.
Yeah, that is a great one. If you have the opportunity to get help, for sure. I cannot ask for help in the middle of my face down, goggles, water full of mouth full of water, water full of mouth. So yeah, just definitely getting help. And especially if you're truly suffering from, something that is beyond what you can help. But I think these things are for when you're in that quiet, lonely moment and it's just you, that you can use these tactics until you could get some help, for sure. That's a great point, Maria. I love it. So with our new format, we are going to go over action items that we want to, if somebody can have some takeaways, if they go out of this podcast, what action item would you give somebody, Maria, who was dealing with pain and suffering, and how they might be able to help themselves?
I think my favorite technique is the meaning making or storytelling aspect of anything difficult. And so if somebody out there is experiencing something really difficult, I would say, what is the story you're telling yourself about this pain or this suffering, and is it true? Because usually, you can find a way to think about it that is more helpful and more positive. Like in the example you gave of your skin, even when I was going through brain cancer. My sister had brain cancer, and I was with her. We would talk about all the gifts that her illness gave us. So try to tell a story that is helpful and true.
Yes.
What about you, Kelly? What would be your takeaway?
I think I would ask people to be prepared. Just be prepared that life is going to throw something at you. Your race is going to throw something at you. That life is painful. If you're an athlete listening, yes, your races are going to hurt. They do. So just be prepared with something, whatever it is. If it's your little commercial jingle that you sing to yourself, a song,
locomotive,
but have that power mantra, that little thing that, I have a little thing, anybody who knows me knows that I suffer with anxiety, and when I get into a place, I say these words: I am calm, I am peaceful, I am relaxed. I am calm, I am peaceful, I am relaxed. And those words just flow out of me naturally, and they just lower my cortisol and they lower my blood pressure. And so be prepared with something that's helps you. It could be you're singing your favorite song. It could be a power mantra. It could be something. But like I said, if you're going into a race, then you know that. But if you're going into the dentist and you go in thinking you're just getting your teeth cleaned, and they find, oh my gosh, you've got a small little cavity here, and we can get rid of this right now. And then all of a sudden you're being drilled and you're getting a shot and you're in pain. Then have something prepared that you can go somewhere else for, your relief. Oh gosh. And you know what? I got to tell a story, because really quick, I know stories are important, but it goes back to needles. I had a swimmer who had to get cortisone shots in her knee. She was a breaststroker, and I went with her. This is when I was coaching at University of South Carolina, one of my top, swimmers, and she went in there, and it was gigantic, like 4 gigantic needle shots, just like I went through, into her knee. And she was so calm. And I said, what? How did you go through that without any response at all? She said, I was not in that room, coach. She said, I was swimming.
That's good.
Yeah, I was swimming with dolphins.
She was in her happy place
on a Caribbean island. So, just have that happy place, have something prepared in your life that when something bad comes up, you can change the neural pathway from going to worst case scenario to going to a Caribbean island.
I love it.
All right. Well, that is going to put a wrap on this show. And we so appreciate you guys listening. And if you really like us, then please, subscribe to us on YouTube. That's where we're trying to develop our audience. And you can download on all of the normal locations. But if you could subscribe on YouTube, you would just get a once a week notice when our videos come out with the podcast. So we really appreciate you listening today. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
Bye-bye.
This week's quote of the week comes from William Parker. As much as we would like to avoid pain and suffering, they are some of life's best teachers.
We are so grateful that you spent this time with us today, and we hope that you heard something that inspired, motivated, and educated you. Please see below for our copy of the show notes for any links or important information referenced here. Signing off for myself and champion co-host Kelly Pallas, we hope you'll join us again soon, and we know you can be a champion. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to the Champions Mojo podcast, designed to make you feel inspired, motivated, and educated. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. Also visit championsmojo.com to learn more.